Video 2.
Hi and welcome to part 2 of a series of videos that we are calling Across the Spectrum. And for those of you who follow me on my Australian sexologist page, you'll know that this is just a bunch of, our answers to all of your questions around how Lauren and myself navigate being in a relationship where somebody is neurotypical, which is me, and neurodiverse, which is Lauren. Oh, and caveat, yeah?
Yep. Caveat that we're not experts in autism, we're just experts in our own lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose one of the biggest ones was that we both at times felt like we were coming, or we lived on different planets, so we're looking at things quite differently. Would you?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose Naomi was wanting more from me in terms of communication, and I sort of couldn't understand why she needed all of this stuff.
And I think, as we're going along this journey, I'm also realizing that my brain, I get very emotive and also, often think about my intuition and my gut feelings and stuff. And so, and when I'm talking about something, I might sort of say something that I suppose is, I think maybe for you it feels abstract. Whereas I've realized that we need to stick to one topic and sort of deal with that before we go to the next kind of thing. So it's been a struggle in that sense. I mean, that's why the whole, journey to diagnosis happened, because I couldn't understand. Like, I felt like, whilst, everybody has, the things they perhaps feel they're better at in some ways, and others their talents or their skills or whatever. I couldn't work out why I was having all these emails from my clients going, "Oh, you've saved my marriage. Thank you. Our communication's heaps better." And I just couldn't understand how at home that seemed to be, I was coming to a bit of a dead sort of a brick wall. Yeah. And it wasn't that, we actually weren't really fighting over anything really in particular, but first off I couldn't, and again I talk about this in the other video, but I didn't understand what those shutdowns were. I did think that possibly they had something to do with Lauren's trauma, didn't we? We kind of mentioned that Lauren would often have these shutdowns, the occasional meltdown, and again we can talk about that in another space, but and I did not understand, and I always first off thought it was something to do with me. Like, I couldn't understand why she couldn't speak. And when I say she couldn't speak, you literally cannot speak, can you?
It gets to the point that I can mutter a few words, so I might say that I can't talk right now, and that's probably the extent of it, which is probably not helpful when Naomi is feeling like I'm ignoring her or shutting her out because I may have an issue with her, when it actually has nothing to do with her. My brain is, just think of a computer, it's got too many applications open and it actually physically can't process anything anymore, and then it'll do one of those hard shutdowns. So essentially my brain is doing the exact same thing. It's just shutting down and not enabling me to talk or do anything.
And I think for anyone who's done any sort of work around relationships, or just thinking of yourselves if you're in relationships with people, we often have these patterns, and it's hard to divorce all of this stuff, our attachment, all of these things as well. And so for a lot of people, that I felt like there was something going on where, she was shutting down, so giving me the cold shoulder kind of thing, even though it was very confusing because I was very like, well, hang on, nothing's really happened either. Like, it wasn't that we'd had this argument and then she'd done it. She was already doing it, like going quiet, which now we know what that is. But so then I would try to talk to her and I would make it worse because I'm asking for something from her and feeling very, very, like she'd just push me away kind of thing, even though she wasn't physically doing that. But I didn't realize the extent of how she literally couldn't say anything which would make me upset. And then but Lauren was unable to sort of do anything for a very long time, like sometimes for hours or something, and it was very hard. And they would sort of just come on, and now we sort of are a bit more aware of when this might happen, especially if she's had lots of big days at work. And I was kind of coming at it from all these other angles, so I managed to get her to not work, drop a day a week. So she was doing 4 days and then 3 days off, which did help. I will say, even before we knew this, it did help, didn't it? Because I think the less stress from work, which we all realised what that was. So that was really tough. So there's been a bit of, adjusting to that. And obviously I'm a chatter, which Lauren can be, but in certain situations, if there's emotions that are there, sometimes it's not that you don't feel them. Do you want to explain it? Sometimes they're just like you said.
Yeah, I suppose emotions are confusing. It's either it's one way or the other. It's a lack of emotion, so zero feeling about a situation, or it's so much emotion that I don't know what those emotions are. So essentially I will just start crying hysterically and not know why or what I'm feeling. Or so it's sometimes pinpointing the emotion. So it's sort of like, I don't know if I'm angry, I don't know if I'm sad, I don't know if I don't know what other emotions there are.
Yeah, something else. And when she says hysterically, I wouldn't say, she's silent, cries, it's very sad. So I'm sitting there, my big empath heart, my darling is sitting there crying with these tears coming down, and I don't know what to do. I'm like, baby, can you tell me what it is? And sometimes you might mutter. You just usually say, I don't know. And you're literally, and I used to think, she's so smart. How can she not know say it? Like, is it happy? And I was coming, so it was very confusing. And again, it makes a lot of sense now. But yeah, I realized that it's just that in that moment also, there's an overwhelm almost, this shutdown, so you can't do it. So it can be hard. And again, we'll go into this a bit more, but one of Lauren's love languages, which wasn't mine, is physical touch. And I realised for her, that is the way she tells me that she loves me. And when she's in shutdown mode, even that generally stops. She can't do anything. And so it's very hard for me because it's very confusing. So we're trying to kind of navigate that, and we're still in the middle of it. But as I said, it's not really necessarily that we have particular things that we fight about. It's just when this happens, so we've had to learn to adjust, because I had never dated or been with anyone who was on the spectrum. So this was very new, and Lauren had been single, which is again a big indicator. She was just hanging out with her dog and happy doing that. So didn't really have to worry about the dog's not going to ask for the things that I'm going to ask for. Yeah. Yeah, so going on probably from the last question, just that knowing this has been amazing for both of us, because I thought, what is wrong with me? I can't do this. I can't get this right. And I felt really like a failure and something was going on, and I'm sure you probably felt the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I knew that there obviously, Naomi had expressed there's a gap, and because, she is great at conversation and will bring up topics and things that I don't want to talk about or I don't notice, that there was a gap in, obviously, her love language is words of affirmation, and I don't have a lot of words a lot of the time, so it's also me learning to be a little bit more, not a little bit more neurotypical, but essentially the things that she needs from me in order to feel loved. So I have to make a concerted effort just as much as she has to with the relationship. So
it's 2 ways.
Absolutely. So I've got to just work a little bit harder at saying more things, or writing little notes, or doing more words essentially.
And I've got to learn to probably slow down, and I have to stick very much on one topic before I go to the next. I think there's another question coming up that will help continue this conversation. That's kind of also an ongoing journey, I reckon, because we're kind of still in the middle. Like, one of the things we've done is find a therapist who, again, there's not many. So I'm also in the process of wondering, I'm going to possibly get some training as well, just because of my work. I'm noticing it as well. But so we found someone online who wasn't in Brisbane, where we both live at the moment. And she's very much versed in working with folks who are either both on the spectrum, or one is and one isn't. So that sort of in itself is helping, but we've only just started that. And also we've probably podcasts and
lots of
YouTube and also articles and stuff. Although I will give people a warning, because I've noticed that there's a lot of negativity on there as well. And that can be a bit scary. I was a bit overwhelmed by all the statistics and stuff, and I couldn't actually find a lot where the woman, or mostly it was a lot about men on the spectrum.
I suppose heterosexual
and
relationships.
Heterosexual relationships. Obviously, we're gay, so there's other things that that we just navigate, being gay folks navigating a heteronormative sort of world. But yeah, so do you want to talk about what you were just saying about steps and things around, like, with the communication stuff?
Yeah, I suppose one thing and that was probably one of the, in the beginning, when we would have a conversation around, I don't know, emotions or feelings, and Naomi was saying that she was missing something that I needed to do, and I would always say, can you give me the steps? So can you tell me the rules? Can you tell me, like, I need a clear outline. I don't know, draw me a diagram and I'll be happy.
Which I was like, what? In my mind, see, my neurotypical brain and what I learned about neurotypical ways of conversing was like, hang on, don't you just do this intuitively? And there was that. So of course now this makes much more sense. But I was like, why do I have to tell her the rules? Like, don't you just know this? In my mind I was like, and I mean, I'm actually quite patient, and I think being older, I'm nearly 46 now, and I think I certainly know that in relationships anyway, we have what I think are absolutely unrealistic expectations from people, and toxic monogamy culture, the parts of that tell you that, one person gives you everything, that kind of thing. And also that sort of romantic narrative that says, oh, we read each other's minds and stuff like that. So I think that's fed into us. So there's all these things going on in my head anyway. So I think I'd learned a lot to ask, just be very clear with what I need, and knowing that, our partner's not always going to be able to do that. So that was helpful anyway. I think I was coming in there, but I was still confused, and so I didn't understand. But I now know that Lauren does need a set of sort of things outlined almost. And so, I've had to say to her, like, if you see me, I mean, you said you sometimes know, I mean, I will tell you if I'm having a bad day. I'm like, oh, hey, I'm feeling really sad, I need a cuddle. I will just ask, because I think it's important we do that anyway. But you've said you'll know things from my behaviour. That's sort of something you observe me a lot and know, don't you? Is that sort of...
Yeah, versus, so I'm assuming most people will just watch faces. I'll watch behaviour. I suppose we are creatures of habit, right? So people generally do similar things and they'll do them in a similar way. Whereas if a behaviour changes, then I'll know that there's something wrong. I won't in particular know what is wrong, whether you're happy, sad, angry or indifferent, but I'll just notice that there's been a behaviour change. So it might be the way that you do something. I suppose not as obvious as banging pots, but yeah, it's just slight changes in behaviour that then sort of make me go, oh, okay, hang on, something's different. It's not how we usually do things.
And then I think also for me, I just think with anybody, I am quite empathetic, and so I'm always checking in on people and picking up on stuff. And so sometimes I feel sad, or there's frustration in that Laura might not pick up on some of that stuff. I have to tell her. And, like I'll say to her, if you saw me on the lounge and I was curled up crying, you might want to come and give me a hug. Even though, it's not that she doesn't want to give me a hug. she just is so worried, like you say, oh, you know, I don't know if you're angry and that will be in your space, because sometimes obviously for Lauren, when she's especially having one of her shutdowns, you know, she's more likely to want no one to be near her, and so we have to kind of have conversations about that. And as I said, Lauren's love language is touch, which I realized she doesn't really do for anybody else. She only really likes to touch me. Like, for example, when we date, we had a giggle about dating, right? When you go on those apps, and I would sit through a whole date and super polite, and then I would get home and I'd make sure I said to the person, you know, that was a lovely date, thank you, but I don't want to see you anymore. But Lauren would just do it to the person, like in the actual date. She would just be like, not okay, I'm not feeling this kind of thing, and get out of them very quickly, which I used to giggle about, but now makes sense. And so I couldn't work out, you know, I always would say to her, like, you know, what was it about me? And it's not like, you know, I don't know, sometimes people might say, oh, because you're lovely and you're this, and I don't know. And Lauren just says, you made me comfortable. And now I realize it's a big thing. But back then I was like, oh, okay. And now I know that you kind of touch my hand you held my hand, which I was like, oh, because I was still kind of like, where's this going? I'd been single for a while, so it was kind of like, see what happens. You know, I wasn't really bothered whether, you know, I was single or not, you know, so I was like, let's just go meet this person. And now I realize that for her, that was, you know, my head was just getting to know her as well. But yeah, the comfortability thing was big for you, right? Because you would much prefer often to just hang out by yourself. So
absolutely, because I mean, my choice is hang out by myself or hang out by myself. So like, if you don't make me feel comfortable, then I can easily go and hang out with myself and my dog. So it was a very easy decision for me.
Yeah. And so, or I would say things like, you know, again, I'm a sexologist, so I'm very, you know, I've always been very comfortable. One part about being a sexologist is I'm very open about sex and talking. So I'd be like, you know, what do you think about our relationship? What do you want to do here and there? And, you know, they were things that Lauren hadn't necessarily had discussions about. And I would say, tell me what you love about me. And I would reel off things, and she would struggle because you'd put her on the spot. And then I thought, you know, I was like, does that mean she doesn't love me? Even though she was very pan-faced and would say, I love you. I just love you. I'm just like, elaborate. And then it was later that you did these little things, which was a habit and a ritual that we put in. I didn't even know that Lauren then put in something in your diary, right?
Yeah, because I know Naomi obviously likes words, and she likes words of affirmation, and she likes little notes and stuff like that. So I got a subscription to a postcard thing app, and I now put reminders in my phone so that I can, you know, make a little postcard and write something, which admittedly is very, very difficult. It probably takes me a couple of days to write one.
Whereas I can do something like that in like 5 minutes. I can just, it all comes out, right? Yeah. It's a big thing for Lauren. So I have to kind of say that, realize that for her, that's huge. So that's where I've got to go. My expectations were, why can't you just do that? Because I'm kind of pretty romantic, I would say. Probably, I feel like I am. I'm kind of like always, I don't know, I'm a Libran, and I'm like writing things and trying to make everything fabulous. And yeah, it's very hard for you to do it, but it's beautiful. When I get it, I get really excited. Just randomly, I'll get this thing in the mail, and she's written these things, and I'm like, oh, so they're very special to me. And so I have to look at it from that way, meaning that yes, she's had to put time aside, but that's how her brain works, because she couldn't do that in the day. Whereas I can fit everything in. I can, you know, I'll have sessions with my client, and in the middle, I'm like trying to organize a holiday or sending her stuff or whatever. So yeah, we're just making adjustments to that stuff. But also I know that with the love language thing, you know, Lauren's is that her touching me, which for me was pretty full on for a bit because I'm not so touchy. So I've had to adjust that, knowing that for her, that's often the way she tells me that she loves me, because you don't really like hugging.
No, I don't tend to like, obviously again, it's also masking. So when I go to work and I go to meetings and people like to hug and people like, you know, thank goodness for COVID, because now that's made everybody step back just a teeny bit, but there's still the avid huggers in the workplace and around that still want to hug. I'll obviously hug people because I also don't want to make them feel uncomfortable, but I hate it. So I really hate like hugging and touching other people. It probably distresses me a little bit, but I obviously just work through it because.
And can I interrupt and say, this is why people need to say, may I hug you? Consent all the time, because you don't know what's going on for these people. So I just want to say, did you hear what she said? She's distressed, and I bet you are not the only one. So I just say to people, I've got, and don't get me wrong, I did it before, so now I'm often, before I met you, but I would be like, may I hug you? Because I think consent, that's a big thing. So that's just hearing that word, I feel bad that people, that you and others are feeling that way.
And I think the thing is also not being offended by it. It's like, well, it's not because I don't like you that I don't want to hug you, I just don't want to hug you. I just don't like the feeling of touching other people.
Yeah.
Obviously Naomi, because, why?
And I like them, but also I didn't like as much touching as Lauren. So, and also you have to remember we are we're gay and people stare at us, so that hasn't stopped even though we're older gays. I suppose if that's incredible. She's like, what are you, 8 years younger than me? But people stare at us a lot, so I can't tell whether they're staring at us because they think we're gross or disgusting, or they're curious, or maybe they're just like, oh yeah, I've got a gay kid and sweet, I don't know. So we do get stared at. So, but I think we've got to the point, Lauren's just, excuse me, but she's just like, fuck, whatever, I don't care what people think. But it is obviously when we travel, it's an issue, because in some countries we've got to Google whether touching and being gay in public is illegal. And so for Lauren, that is for her, she will touch me. That is obviously quite comforting for her, or she'll touch my fingers, or and so I know that that's how she's telling me she loves me, but also, we're navigating what other people, we get stared at a lot. So I've kind of just had to go, well, all right, that's okay. I just got to get used to this. And now, I've learned to like cuddles a lot more than I used to, because I grew up in a house where there wasn't many. So that's kind of not really, other partners have said that to me before about me not being as cuddly. So, it's something I had to work on anyway. But knowing that was her sort of pretty much your one love language, right? And
And I suppose the thing is also, normal relationships with both neurotypical people have to navigate.
Oh, for sure.
As well, so.
For sure. So that's what I mean. This is not just a thing just for a neurotypical person and a neurodiverse person. This is something I talk about with clients all the time, about also having to, if you're in a relationship and you want this to work around how you might have to make some compromises. And when I say compromises, I don't mean it in the way that you're so resentful that really you're not compromising, you're just actually being coerced almost. It's like, I mean, genuinely going, okay, I'm going to do this. It's like Lauren, as she said, it takes her many days to write these little things for me, but she does it because she knows that's important to me. And so that's why I've kind of been more okay. And I think, if I said to Lauren, hey, stop touching me for a bit, she would understand that, I haven't actually said that, but if I did, you would probably be okay anyway, knowing it was just that I might have needed a break from that, just like, she needs a break in other ways as well. So that's kind of just the ways that we are navigating the differences in our styles. Yeah, I think one of the first ones before we realised it's been helpful, but actually this was before the diagnosis, was that I had mentioned that I was very concerned about burnout, which we've since read is a thing too, not just, anyone in general, because I think society, right, white Western society in particular, is really full on about glamorizing working, right? But also realizing all the stuff she goes through on a day-to-day, which was like full on. So we'd already suggested that 1 day a week, although at this point it means that she's still squishing and stuff and probably doing sometimes 10-hour days, which are not good. Let's be honest, that's not great, sometimes more than that. So we're really, I think both of us and I had said I was so worried about her physicality, her body and her mind, like what was happening. But what we've done, I suppose, is we moved house, and we have a house with lots of light space. I feel like we're very lucky, again, very privileged in that we could afford to find a house where it feels nice. When I say that energetically, I just mean it's a lovely place to come home, and I've got lots of low lights, we've got lots of nice art, just different colors and different things like that. So when we come home, it's a nice, gentle place. We do this thing, right? We always talk about, I always talk about the importance of greeting each other and all that kind of stuff, which we do. But then I might say, babe, I cannot talk. I've had 8 clients in a day and it's really full on, and she will say the same. Sometimes I can tell by her eyes. And so we'll do things like you'll start your ironing ritual, which she does about depending on what outfit, 'cause I'm not so bothered by any of that. And then one of us will do dinner. We try to do easy things, and Lauren probably does have, not so much as what some of the folks who are in my DMs making me laugh when they're telling me about hashtag same foods, which is the thing. We realise Lauren does that probably with dessert, has the same food over and over again, but she will eat other things, but does have some sensory stuff. But basically we try to we have a little picnic on the ground, and we kind of put little rugs and sit on the ground, and we'll, depending on how bad a day it is, and so I might be searching for that and checking what's going on for her, and then I'll go, right, if it's like we might say something if it's really bad at work, but then we'll put something very easy on, like on the TV, something funny. We like a lot of the same things, lots of docos and stuff and animals and things like that, but something that will help us just do that. So we'll eat together but next to each other, but also doing that
lots of low lights,
low light,
just reducing the intensity of light, the intensity of noise, because that's, I suppose, once you're sort of, your anxiety levels have risen, every little thing sort of just takes it up 10 notches, and then that just builds up that anxiety. So to come home and just have a really quiet environment and really low light, it allows me to sort of de-stress a few notches sort of before we go to bed, because otherwise I'm super tense, and albeit I do still sleep like a log, but
yeah. And Lauren has used CBD oil. I've tried it, and I feel like it doesn't do much for me. I know I've had a lot of my clients talk about this stuff too, and there's obviously different levels and stuff, but I feel like it doesn't do much, but I didn't really use it much. But for Lauren, that's really been a game changer as well, just in, so the non-activated one, so you're not whacked or anything, just one you've noticed it, haven't you?
I suppose it just helps me manage my anxiety and stress on a day-to-day basis. So I, whether placebo or not, it does significantly reduce my stress, because obviously my stress starts, I suppose, from the moment I wake up in the morning. So having that just before I head off to work just allows my body to drop down a few notches in terms of stress, and then enables me to cope with the day a little bit better. Oh,
and Lauren, we have a gym set up under the house, because Lauren also does have pain stuff because of an horrible accident and things like that. But I've noticed, just being on the outside of this, if she doesn't keep that routine up, she can get a little bit frustrated. And so, I think she does really well considering everything that we're learning, especially Mum always wanted to travel or do different things. But for example, if she's up a bit late and then panics that her routine is out, because we do this sort of exercise where I go off, I do my own thing and ride a bike and do all that. And sometimes I stay down there and do some things, but she's down there doing that. Then we meet up together for breakfast. We always have breakfast together, which when I first met Lauren, she wasn't really eating. So she's now got into the habit of having a good brekkie, because I realised she literally doesn't eat the rest of the day. And that literally is just because of her magic power, the hyperfocus, she forgets. But one morning, for example, she was late and she had an iron. Something had happened. I think we had a late night or something. But we try not to do that. So that's another thing that we do. We don't, I'm not really bothered. We both don't drink, or very rarely we drink, but we don't really go out that much. Probably also because I don't have as many friends here in this city, because I come from another city. But we don't, and obviously there's been COVID, and that's helped. It's actually helping. We noticed that. But anyway, when something happened, she hadn't ironed, and she went downstairs, and I could automatically tell she was just frustrated. So I just thought, I'll iron something for her to help her, because I want her to be able to not be so stressed, because I obviously now know what she goes through in just a morning to even get to work, before she even gets to work. And so I picked 2 outfits out as well, because I know how particular she is. And then when I came upstairs, they were there, I had them laid out. And in Lauren's very monotone voice, what I felt was awful, she said, why did you do that? And I didn't realize that obviously, I was super offended and cried, actually, didn't I? So it was just not good. And then of course I'm crying because I feel like she was rude. And then she's trying to help me, but then I'm worried about her, because I know that the more she tries to calm me down and give me a cuddle or something, she's going to be late. And then I felt bad. So we had this sort of weird. So we have these sometimes things like that, where I was so offended. Like, can't you just see that I just picked out too close to try and help you? But obviously I've just got to kind of let her do it, because whatever I picked out, she still went with something else anyway. And as she mentioned earlier in one of the videos, it could have been that I did pick the right thing on that morning, but this morning it wasn't the right outfit. You were just like, you know, so there's things like that. We need things to kind of happen fairly smoothly, and I've just got to kind of know that it's not really about me. But that's been difficult. I'm trying to just understand that, because she can sound really bloody rude. And she said this to me before, haven't you, that other people have talked about your voice and stuff, and now we realise that's a bit of a thing too around the monotone. So I thought, oh, she's South African. We joked about South African, and I joked you're an Aries. You know, there was all these things I was going into it, and then I realised also it's just probably part of your being autistic around your tone and stuff, yeah. And also she has a million things. So we try to make everything as gentle as possible. Of course, life doesn't always work like that. I think she does remarkably well, to be honest. And when we travel and stuff, we've realised we mostly try and get our own hotel rooms and things like that. And also now even more, because Lauren had quite a sort of meltdown, shutdown thing where she just is really sad and cries and doesn't really know what's going on, and that's usually around work stuff. But we realised that too much, like if we've gone out and had breakfast, like that weekend we'd had breakfast with my friend who Lauren actually likes, it's just, you know, there's a lot of the conversation, and then we met some other people and the conversation went for ages, and there was just lots of stuff, and we realised that was massive. So the energy she uses, and I suppose a lot of folks in the disability community often use the word spoons about how we all start, something along the lines of we all start with some spoons in the morning, but some of us already use a whole bunch of spoons just to get, you know, somewhere. And I would say that for Lauren, that's probably a good way to describe it, in that for her, she's already using all these things, so sometimes her body just can't take it anymore. So she doesn't really you don't really have as many like meltdowns where you scream or you don't like yell at anyone. You've had sort of, maybe I've seen you sort of snap once or twice, but it's more yours is a shutdown, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and you know, back to Naomi's points about, I suppose, busy weekends, and again, I have a certain amount of energy, and I suppose it's about, you know, I have to be effective in my use of energy, so it's like I just can't go, because then you know, I'm going to go in shutdown or meltdown, or breakdown, either one. Mm-hmm. So I've got to effectively manage my energy. So if we go out on a Friday night, a Saturday, you know, a Sunday, by Sunday afternoon, I'm going to be in shutdown, because I know that I also have an entire week of work coming up that I need to be on my A game, and it's going to take a lot of energy for me to do that. So it's, I suppose, about, you know, having a good home to come home to with all the things that meet your needs, but being effective in the use of your energy. So if, you know, I'll say no if I don't want to go out. I generally try. I might just be a little bit more quiet because I just don't have the energy to talk or start conversation, things like that. But yeah, I generally, again, I probably do push myself.
I think you do. I was going to say you do. I feel like I've actually been the one who's had to say, honey, we don't need to do all those things, even though I'm pretty social, because you would push yourself. And then I don't think until we realised this whole diagnosis, she didn't know why she would be like that, because she'd just push herself. And even your other work, you were consistently asked to go here, go there, and do all these events after 12-hour days and things. She was just work. So I think now you're realising the importance of that. And like, yeah, but even together we're realising we'll have to just say, go do slower thing. I don't mean slow, I just mean like if there's been a massive thing. But yeah, work is very like taxing on Lauren, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously requires me to be neurotypical, so I have to be perceived as being neurotypical, because I have to obviously meet demands and expectations. And obviously I also want to deliver on those, so I have a high level of expectation for myself. So I will keep pushing until I achieve or until I get something right. But yeah, I probably do need to manage that a little bit better, and that's probably some of the things we're learning at the moment, and obviously with the help of the psychologist giving me some tools and tips around, how to
not have burnout, because apparently it's a thing. Like, again, we're still learning, but that autism burnout is a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're in the middle of that. I think we've kind of covered. Yeah. So first off, I suppose we are still learning different ways of doing what works for us, and I suppose every couple, or if there's more than two people in the relationship, you're just going to have to be working out what works for you. But yeah, I suppose for me, one of the things I've had to do is try to, which is very hard, but to not have my feelings hurt when I think she's being rude or has dismissed something. Yeah, that's probably for me. I don't know, is that...
I suppose that question, we probably don't have a lot of conflict, as in like...
No.
Because it's generally something's happened, I've shut down and I'm not able to, I suppose you want to have a discussion about something and it's a two-way conversation, I'm generally just sitting there blank.
And that's the thing, like, I'm not kidding when I say that. There's nothing back. Like, Lauren all I can just say, again, Lauren knows this, like, I feel like it's robot. She literally becomes a robot, her eyes glaze over. And so all I want is for her to give me something that she's there. And I do say, like, actually I used to joke, I still do it sometimes if she's disappeared. I go, oh, welcome back, honey. Because I feel like she's just gone, like, for a bit. And, but it's very frustrating when I'm feeling hurt and I feel like she doesn't understand that I'm hurt. And also you just, you can't talk, right? You can't talk because you've shut down, and I'm like checking, going, I wonder if I've done something, and is it me? And I used to do it more back when we first got together, like, have I done something? Or then I knew to say, is this something to do with family, what's happened, or work? And yeah, usually, it's not necessarily me.
No, I don't, probably 0.01% of the time. But yeah, I think it's just knowing that it's almost like a delayed reaction. So it's like, I know you want to talk about it in that moment, but my brain is not going to facilitate this conversation right here and right now. So it's almost like Naomi's got to get it out, and then I've got to wait for a time that my brain can process it, and then I can come back and talk about it. Because I suppose the other thing is also elevated emotions. So if my emotions get elevated, I also can't talk. So I, again, go into shutdown because I don't know what all of this is, and my brain is overwhelmed, and then no words will come out. So essentially it's this, I don't know, delayed gratification or delayed solution, where it's sort of like, okay, we're going to put it on the table, but then we're going to have to wait until my brain essentially wakes up and I can start to talk about it, or that also my brain has had time to comprehend all of it, because obviously emotions are not my forte. So my brain's got to go back and it's got to sit and go through a whole bunch of things to understand, okay, this is what happened, this is why we're here, this led to this, so okay, cool, I can talk about it now because I understand what we're talking about. And yeah,
and I've got to kind of try to keep onto one thing and then the next kind of thing. But I suppose, it's both about, that. Also, the other thing, I suppose, is that this is not going to change in the sense of Lauren's always going to be autistic, so this is it. So this is our relationship, and we've just got to work on ways that that suits us and makes us feel okay. And I think we've already started doing some of that. We'll talk a bit more in another video around sexual stuff and other parts of relationships, romance and different things, because people asked us questions. They were really great. But yeah, we're just kind of having to get tips and tricks to deal with that, and also, I suppose, learning to self-soothe, and not, for me, trying not to get my feelings hurt, because often, as I said, it's usually not me, it's something else. It's just that it happens and I'm around her and I can't tell, like she's been talking and then all of a sudden it happens and I'm just like bewildered by what's just happened. So I'm getting better at thinking, I think she's shut down. And on the occasion that she's had a meltdown, I had to realise that it wasn't, she doesn't really have, you don't really have them so much, but I think you did once when we were on the boat, stuff like that. And so I'm really hurt and not understanding where this is coming from. I think I was a bit shocked, but it was just that, yeah, she had all this overload, so in a different way. Lauren usually does not acting out, hers is in. Would that be a good way of like describing it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I don't think we don't ever recall shouting at you, but once.
Yeah, there was a really overloaded thing. It was a sensory thing in the ocean. It was a whole bunch of massive things travelling, and I realised, yeah, you're in pain, and there was a whole bunch of stuff happening.
Yeah, so I feel like mine just sort of goes in, and I'm just essentially super quiet. Not by my choice at all. I suppose sometimes often in my head I know I should be talking and I should be explaining or having a conversation about this, but it's literally like somebody's taped your mouth shut, and there are no words in your head. So somebody could ask you something super simple like, how are you feeling, and
you get nothing.
I can't answer that question. Maybe give me a computer problem, I can go and fix it for you. But
yeah, she can fix all the computer things, and even if she's upset, she can sit with a computer and be fine. That's like distracting, or she goes hyper focus or whatever. But to try to have a conversation with me or something, it's usually me because it's just us around. We only live with the two of us. But yeah, it's tough, and we just kind of have to sort of talk about it. Like the last time you had that really awful meltdown, it was really sad, but she stayed next to me. I know they didn't ask her to do that, but she did and tried to do it. But it's still very sad when your partner is super sad and in this thing but has nothing. And they're very draining, so she's already drained, and then that goes for hours and hours and hours. So it's just trying to learn to do things. I mean, I'm just looking on the floor, but they're like, we normally have a thing. We've got like a Rubik's cube. We went and bought some
ooze,
some slime, which is cool. I kind of like that too. But yeah, we've got a few different things in case it gets really bad, and that's helpful. Yeah. Thanks for all those questions.
Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions that you would like to shoot us over, just look at our info in our bio.